Hello, everyone. Um,
Good morning, Besu.
ah, I've pasted an agenda in the chat, so feel free to edit that if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to use it to take notes, and we can give it another 2 minutes before people join to get started.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Okay, we can probably get started. Um, okay, so this meeting is being recorded as usual. Please, of course, mute, raise your hand. Feel free to ask any questions, and there's an antitrust notice at the Linux Foundation website and in the link that I shared. I added two items to the agenda. I think we might have some other items as well, because I'm hoping we can get a general update on a few things. But the first is a quick one. We've finished the burn-in for release 24.7.0. We expect a release tomorrow. Performance looks good. There's no regressions that we can see, and our sync testing and other testing went pretty well. So we will probably push that out for a Wednesday release tomorrow. Um, Probably on the US time zone is my guess. Um, any questions on the latest slate of releases? Yeah, I don't know if there's, it's pretty straightforward here. Cool. All right. Well, that's an easy one. The next one is I want to discuss briefly the Sunset announcement blog. So for those, I believe many, if not all of you on the phone have seen this. I'm gonna grab the link right now and place it in the chat. This is the blog post that I have been writing but not released around the planned sunset of different features from the Besu code base. There's a few comments that are needed to be adjudicated for sure. But I also wanted to clarify some things specifically around kind of the what it means to move some of this stuff to the plugins. But first, I know Matt Whitehead, there was some back and forth in the comments that we had there. I don't know as well if there's the other kind of permissioning and privacy work that Kaleido has been working on that's ready to discuss at this point. I don't want to like rush anything. I think we were trying to kind of link all those together. Do you have any updates there?
Yeah, yeah. Hi Matt. Hi everyone. Yeah. So I've been having a chat with Jim from our side about where we are. I think we're probably at the place where we're probably at least a few weeks out from having something that's useful to put in here. You know, if we put something in here and people then want to learn more and we haven't got anything more to share at that point, it's not particularly useful. Um, so I think we're probably at the point of being a few weeks away from having something slightly more to share that we could link out to from here around a privacy kind of approach that Kaleido is working on and is potentially going to contribute a new Hyperledger project for. Um, so I guess it partly depends on how keen you are to kind of get this blog article published. And whether or not holding out a bit longer while we get some more stuff sorted out our side, whether that's kind of a bit of a pain or not. It's
No,
obviously,
it's
getting rid of the private, saying that Tessera privacy is kind of being deprecated. It would be nice if there was an easy, but here's a potential alternative that you can go look at. It would be nice if we could have that all in the same article, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to delaying it. What I am opposed to is altering the timeline we've laid out in the blog. So it essentially just gives people 4 months as opposed to 6. I still want to target the 25.1 release series to cut a lot of this
Mhm.
stuff. But again, I
Yeah,
think that with like the code freeze, for example, there's like a code freeze from months 4 and 5. Like we kind of already have frozen the code on a lot of this stuff. So maybe we can just reduce the timeline to say like we're freezing code kind of nowish. We're gonna push the last changes to things like the privacy, the trace, like tracing private transactions features. Like let's get all the rest of that stuff out of the door because we want to be able to freeze the code at a point where this is kind of a good segue where people can start to try to either just like, think how they want to maintain these features, right? And I wrote this in the comment in the document about permissioning
mm,
plugins.
yeah,
Like consensus is suggesting that we do this. We're not going to go ahead and do a lot of this. Um, to which is a short way of saying we believe that a lot of this can and should move to the plugins from the mainline code base, and we can support that kind of work by basically providing, code reviews and some engineering effort, but we're not going to take the lead on doing the pluginization ourselves.
yeah,
Um, but the good news is I think that a lot of like, for example, if we package a PR that rips permissioning out of the code base, that'll have a very detailed and thorough look at where permissioning exists within the code base. So adding the hooks to a plugin and shipping that plugin should really just be doing that process in reverse in its own format within like a different repo. Um,
yeah,
so that's kind of the hope that I'm trying to outline. But
yeah,
again, I think that the blog, I will address your comment because I think your comment's a good one. Like, we're not suggesting, or we don't really lay out where in the code base these things are going to be moved to plugins because, again, I also don't want to commit at least our consensus team to doing the work. It's more of a suggestion to say, hey, all of these features could be moved to a plugin. However, we fully support, like, we think we should fully deprecate fast sync just because
yeah,
we don't really know why anyone would need to keep that around. And then kind of paving the way. So maybe I can do a little bit right up here on how and why we think we should move things to the plugin. But not really. I don't really want to commit any particular team is the thing, especially for if you're saying, hey, we have better privacy solutions. Like, should folks waste their time making Tessera a plugin? I think like no.
yeah, exactly. I think I think the privacy side, I think we're probably more relaxed that um you know we've been pushing people away from using Tessera for a little while, and I think that's a space where I think that I guess the basis for some of my comments was I was kind of concerned that someone using Besu today with something like permissioning, maybe a little more than Tessera, but maybe with the permissioning stuff would look at it and go, well, permissioning's a really useful extra layer of protection around which nodes can join, which accounts can do what. It's really useful for us in an enterprise, and all of a sudden it's going, and then yeah, their immediate reaction being to rethink their EVM choices are for like an enterprise deployment. If the blog is really just kind of saying, well, it's going, and not maybe being super clear about, look, no, it's not. It's super possible to have this feature. Um, it's primarily about the code base. It's not so much about Besu thinking this isn't a useful feature, it's not a relevant feature anymore, it's been superseded, which is the case for proof of work and is the case for FastSync. So I guess it's about categorizing the things that are being removed into this is really useful, but the code base can't keep maintaining it entirely. These ones they're just going.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I can reorganize around that. I think that's a good framing. And it's yeah, I think again it's more of a method of like we should have done this in this way from the beginning, but it never materialized.
Yeah.
So like again, we're basically just maybe I can rewrite the opening paragraph as well. It's like we're kind of re-architecting around a base view of like an EVM execution client, where if we think about mainnet as frankly like the least customized network and like streamlining against that use case, and then everything that is added on, like what we've done with Linea, for example, it all exists
Mm.
in the plugins, right? It doesn't exist elsewhere. And that's the kind of approach that I want to tell all of these networks is like you have kind of the base ledger, and then we have all this unfunctionality built on top that we can move to those plugins. Yeah, I can try that reframing. And I also don't see a tremendous harm in waiting for you guys to have the announcement ready. So maybe I'll just wait on this and think how I can rewrite some of the blog posts to basically discuss what we just chatted about on the call.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So that gives us time. Um,
I guess
it's commitment. It's more commitment to like doing the work, right? We we can say all up and down, oh, we're gonna move this to a plugin, we're gonna move this to a plugin, but someone has to step up and do it.
yeah.
I think that it's the same thing that we have in reverse of like this is a you know a substantial PR to remove the thing. So like hopefully we have a template for getting it working in reverse. Um, and we also have like maybe January timeline isn't as realistic as we would like. And maybe we do it in two stages, right? Like for example, fast sync and private, like we can chunk up the things we want to get rid of quicker, especially if the ones we have more robust migration paths for. So like fast sync and privacy, maybe we target first, and then we
Mm,
can target permissioning as a next set of because like permissioning and proof of work and click consensus, we also want to push to the plugins.
yeah.
So maybe we target kind of like a first round of cuts is just a straight cut. Like we intend to not replace anything here. Like this is just gone. So we first iteration is cut with fast sync and privacy. Second iteration is pluginized with proof of work, like consensus, basically the consensus algorithms that are no longer first class citizens,
Yeah.
and things like permissioning, which we still value in the code base, but it needs to move out of the mainline code base. And then third round is even bigger, is the bigger items that we're chasing, like forest mode, which has kind of a lot of moving pieces. And maybe we can target them in these kind of three stages.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think that that would be good. Talking about those categories of things that are going, I think would be nice and clear because it's perfectly fine, I think, for Besu to be saying to people, fasting is has been superseded, it's no longer relevant. The you know, we have now experimental at least support for SnapSync with QBFT. And I think by the time all this pans out, I would hope that it's out of experimental. Um, so I think categorizing it into those sections would be really useful and clear to people that these things are just considered kind of superseded by something else. These things are going to be pluginized, and these things are a bit further down the line. I think yeah, the permissioning one was the one that stuck out most to me as, in some respects, I think an enterprise user consuming Besu through a vendor like ourselves would look at this and go, well, basically you're giving me maybe 6 to maybe 12 months notice that permissioning is being removed. It can be pluginized, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not a Besu knowledgeable kind of development team. Kaleido could potentially do that, but it's kind of committing us to getting that done in a timely fashion so that it can be dropped in again. And I guess I think it will be read as this is kind of being removed as a feature, and then it's then on someone else to add it back in. And I think that would concern, I think that's a feature that people do use, but I guess put it that way. They like it and they
Gotcha.
use it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe then we think it through a little bit
I mean,
more.
I think
Because
maybe
frankly, permissioning is pretty low touch. Like, feel free to correct me, folks on my team. But does permissioning get in the way of what you're doing often? I feel like it's way more around Tessera state management and way more around like the fact that we have a kind of a mess of a sync pipeline. But does permissioning like bleed into like other areas that cause headaches, or is it less of an important to cut?
I would say that the private state and private transactions are way more invasive than permissioning. I almost never notice permissioning being in the way. That said, plugins are great.
Yeah, this one might be more of a cleanup. Anyone else on my team? I kind of just want to get it for the meeting minutes mostly so that I can like reference this and retool that.
So with my current work that I do, I work quite a lot inside the EVM and so, and I think the permissioning was never in the way. So I agree with Gary. I think there is no that's not a big problem.
Okay, cool. So maybe Matt Whitehead, we just like signal, hey, we're evaluating how to streamline these things into plugins, and then we can delay like so first round is the straight up cuts. Second round, we're like we just signal that we're doing stuff, but we don't need to necessarily remove anything until we have the like we can also gate it on like, hey, we're delivering a plugin first and then we just cut it. Like there's options, right?
Yeah.
But I still want to signal it. I still want to signal it. Say, hey, like like Besu main is going to look a lot different because we're moving the use case. Maybe that's another reframing of this article. Give me 1 second to take a note here for myself. Like moving things from Besu main to like we're use case support is moving out of the mainline code base and into like kind of more configurable, more sustainable things like plugins and other stuff. Because we want to support everything in, under the sun, but we might need to do it outside of this.
Yeah, I guess maybe so. I think I totally agree, and it's kind of promising to hear that people don't think permissioning is something that's necessarily a huge pain to have in the code base right now. I think it's maybe it's a really good example of one that we can use as kind of an ongoing discussion as to how Besu would move something like permissioning into a plugin, because it's not the most complicated thing to put into a plugin. I agree, but it would be nice to have a kind of a well-trodden example of one of the capabilities that will at some point be moved into a plugin, and therefore what does the what does the release process look like for a version of Besu that has permissioning? What does a vendor like ourselves do to build Besu with permissioning as a plugin? What testing, who tests Besu with a permissioning plugin, for example? When Besu is released and it goes through all of its burn-in, that's not going to have permissioning. What do we think? As a community, what do we think the answer to that is? Is it pushed back all the way to vendors like ourselves? And I think some of those discussions, which are kind of less, they're more kind of non-technical discussions, and slightly more what's Besu's kind of proposal for how you build and support a release that has Besu mainline and this plugin over here and this plugin over here. Because at the moment it's super easy for us to point customers at a commit which is on our fork, which is typically either the same commit that's on Besu main, or maybe it's like one commit further than Besu main with like a cherry pick change, maybe like a tweaked version number or something. But that picture for us is really clean for us to show our users and say, look, this is Besu pretty much vanilla, but we've done all this testing and everything else. What that story looks like for a vendor when you've got stuff in one repo and another repo and here and there and everywhere. I guess that kind of would be useful to think through as we're going through removing some of the code into plugins.
Yeah, and Gary, I'm gonna turn it over to you really quickly after this comment. But I mean, to be fair, I think that responsibility might fall to those with enterprise customers. Yeah, and another point of note is that there is consensus is working on kind of a revitalization of the plugins in general in Q3 between myself, the documentation team, and some of our engineers. So we might end up with something that looks like a hosted kind of plugin apparatus thing, plus a lot of better documentation. So maybe this problem goes away when we tie those two things together. But I do think that, I mean, Matt, you should, work with your team on what do you want this to look like, right? Like, because we don't support necessarily a lot of those customers in the way that you would understand the requirements. And I have a feeling that Consensus is willing to work with pretty much any approach that makes enterprise happy. And like, as long as it doesn't add overhead to the umpteenth degree on the release, I think we are probably okay with whatever you guys want to add.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Gary. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Matt kind of alluded to the meat of my comment, and that is that we really have just a notion that we want to move functionality to plugins, but we don't really have a plugin store or a plugin distribution mechanism or a plugin testing strategy, a plugin compatibility matrix. That's work that we're going to do, and I think like intuitively, I would think that the plugin authors, the plugin maintainer, it should be upon them to do the lion's share of like compatibility testing for a release. If we could provide like well-trodden ground, to use that same metaphor, for how to provide input for what plugins need to be tested with release via that plugin distribution and mapping mechanism. I think that's where that work needs to go, but I think that's not well defined currently. But that's something we should put on the to tackle problems on the plugin architecture revitalization.
Yeah, I'll try to pull that from the Zoom transcripts. I'm gonna have to take a lot of notes after the fact today because I have been talking. If anyone's been taking notes, feel free to dump them in the agenda that I shared. But that's good. I think to kind of bring us back to where we started and to reiterate some stuff here, I'm going to take a look at how I can potentially reframe the top of that document that I shared around like, hey, we have superseded functionality, we have sets of functions that we want to move out of the code base, and then we have sets of functions that we're still thinking about, like Forest. So talk about those three stages, maybe retool the timeline a little bit to give some more time for the features like permissioning that have more users and might have more of an impact to cut outright. So that will be good. And then on the plugin side, yeah, Gary, all that stuff, that's work that remains to be done. Thinking through the distribution method, like compatibility, as far as like who is responsible to maintain compatibility, how are we offering those plugins, etc. That's all work that we need to add to the backlog for the Q3 plugin revitalization work. So I will hopefully be able to go back in the recording of this call and get all of those nice juicy tidbits out there. And I'll also share that approach on the wiki so people can provide people can give feedback as we go along with the plugin stuff. Any other comments on these two items from the folks on the call before we move on to?
I have one more question. It's more related to the document that you shared some weeks ago. And after you know about that PR with the private loans and so on, I had a call with Stefan Spingel, and we got to the conclusion that it will be a bit tricky to handle this privacy plugin with Bonsai. And I asked in there on the document some question, and I will really appreciate if you have a chance to look at those, Matt.
This
And
is
also,
sorry, one more time.
As I was saying about the questions that I added on the document, I think there are two questions related if the privacy precompiled contract will be still supported with the Bonsai, and also another one about it's about the private transaction manager.
Could you relink that document so that we could have a
Sure.
refresher?
Now I was looking for it, but I can't find it in my here where I can find where I put that, but I will look and reshare it again.
Oh, I've shared in that chat.
Yep.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, it's the last comment which I added on June 18.
okay. I'm gonna share this link. Yeah, I mean, I think that we can just, if we're moving a lot of these features out, we should try to, we're gonna have a crazy amount of plugins that are like depending on each other if we end up in this kind of state where things are just in various states of working.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just looking at your comment, George, as well about bonsai and privacy. Yeah, so I've not done any work on with the experimental QBFT bonsai stuff. I've not done any work to look at what it would take to support privacy there as well. I don't know if that's just because it can't be turned on because bonsai wasn't supported before now, or if there's a fundamental issue with privacy being supported by bonsai. But I'd be happy to go and have a little look at that initially.
Also, Matthew, like if it's something that maybe I can help you with, or if you think you can guide me in one direction or another, just please let me know.
Yeah, sure. An easy way to track that might be if maybe if you raise an issue now that the experimental Snap QBFT work is out, maybe we put comments into an issue about privacy not currently being supported, and we can discuss things in there so it's all in one place.
Okay, that would work.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, thank you. That's all from my side.
Great. Anyone else on the sunset plan announcement, plugins, anything we've covered thus far? Cool. I believe that's all I had. Justin, I'm not sure. I recall you mentioning a topic. I'm not sure if we covered it already.
We did not. I was wondering if we were going to discuss the Linux Foundation decentralization news.
Well, it would have been better if we had Sean on the call who just left. Let me share the announcement again, just so that folks have it. To provide a small summary of this decentralized trust thing, basically we can change the way that the project is organized a little bit. So we should have access to a couple of new things regarding funding, like the way that we can fund different Besu projects can come directly from the project itself. So like foundation members have the ability to raise pots of funds that can pay out against certain sets of Besu work. So that'll hopefully be interesting as far as like, I don't know, incentives and grants are concerned, or maybe if some enterprise needs these features that we're discussing, they can incentivize improving them or maintaining them, etc. The other side of this announcement, it means that we can drop the hyperledger from the name, which we fully intend to pursue, of just going to Besu and removing hyperledger from the name. This means that across all of our materials for like marketing, education, documentation, distribution, we can just be Besu, which will help us separate from the people that think Hyperledger is the name of the actual DLT, and also the people that think that Fabric and Besu and all these other solutions are kind of the same thing as well. So to reiterate, as far as the funding and the money is concerned, I'm not sure how that looks in practice, but we will be able to raise funds essentially as a project, I believe, is what I was told. And we intend to pursue removing Hyperledger from the name. But I encourage you to read the announcement if you have, there's like more specific details in there, but anyone have any questions?
Oh, actually, yes. Do you have any articles, something also about this, like plans and official plans about this? Because right now I'm working on in the Besu, and our decision was to compare these two names by Hyperledger. But now I think what to do next, regularly speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should impact anything there. We're still going to be under the umbrella of projects that are comprising in Hyperledger. I also think Indie Besu is like a good and descriptive name of what it is anyway. I don't know. I don't have, unfortunately, I don't have very good specifics on what it means to actually remove the name. But to be fair, we will still be a part of the kind of umbrella of projects that are associated with Hyperledger. So if other projects choose to not remove the name, that's kind of, I think everyone has their individual choice. But I think since Besu covers so much across the industry, and it's kind of its own thing in many ways. So that was at least my thought process. If the other maintainers have issues with that, we should discuss them here.
Thank you for the answer. Now it looks much better and calm and like a good step. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that it's open source enough that we don't if projects are being tied to Besu, we don't necessarily need them to be done through Hyperledger. Like if you're building platforms on top of Besu that are additional like functional components or reuse the licensing and the code, I think that like tying it to the Besu name is better than going through the Hyperledger name, just because there's so many different technologies and frankly other ledgers that have kind of nothing to do with the EVM and with Besu. So I think tying it more to the Besu name is better than the other way around, in my opinion. I don't know if this changes anything on like the enterprise side, Matt Whitehead. I feel like it's not a huge change. People already kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, I don't expect so. Yeah, I'd heard a kind of brief mention of it, but yeah, I don't imagine it changes too much. We have some branding and stuff for Besu on our platform. We'll look at making sure that's up to date and correct as per any kind of naming changes. But yeah, I wouldn't expect so.
Cool. Any other thoughts? Okay. Happy to move on then. I think that's actually all the topics. It's kind of an open forum now. Does anyone have any open questions? Items they'd like to discuss?
Actually, I want to discuss like I have a PR which is open for a long time. So if anyone can re-review it, just paste it in the chat.
Yes, I think Stefan was also reviewing this as well as working with George. I'll double check to make sure that he is. I spoke with him last night. Yeah, he said he started a review yesterday, but I will double check. But yes, thanks for sharing again.
I just a couple of things I was going to update on, Matt, if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead.
So the main one was just that I'm looking at the Bonsai archive work a bit. So I've mentioned it to one or two on Discord, but just for awareness, that's something that Collider is looking to spend some time investing in to look at what Bonsai archive looks like. There's already some draft work that I've been looking through, and there's a lot to the kind of the a lot of code that I've not been through that I'm going to be familiarizing myself with and asking pretty basic, stupid questions on Discord. So yeah, just for awareness, that's something Collider is looking to move along in the near future. And the only other thing is I'm here at ECC this week, and I'm doing there's a Besu side event for enterprise. It's obviously very public oriented this week, but public chain oriented, but there's a Besu side event for enterprise tomorrow. So I'll be covering some of the latest Besu enterprise bits and pieces in there. So yeah, just for awareness, I went over to meet the Linear team earlier. They seem like they're doing some great stuff. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that.
Awesome. I think Gary is your guy if you have questions about the implementation that I shared in the draft PR from ages ago. We should probably also discuss the design trade-offs prior to getting that started, because there's many different ways that we can do things like checkpointing and some other stuff, and there's trade-offs against storage and like performance, etc. So maybe it's worth having a little meeting or working group once you've gotten your head around the original code.
Yeah,
I think
sorry, go on.
Jason Frame and Kareem and myself, we all have some ideas about how we can kind of take that first proof of concept bonsai archive and make it something that will be performant for an archive mode, because as we discussed, as the chain grows, the performance degrades, but we definitely have some ideas how to iterate on that. So look forward to having Discord conversations about it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Gary. And to others in advance. I thought, well, one thing that I did for some of the other work, the performance work and the CubeFT SnapSync work, was have a page on the wiki just covering kind of like, for example, my setup that I'm using if I'm hitting particular issues, and where we can put notes and things. So I might start by putting some stuff into an article in the wiki at some point. I did read there. I think there was a small kind of design document in the wiki on Bonsai Archive, so I had a bit of a read of that. And then maybe I'll start a thread just to kind of work through some of this stuff, because I think it will be a reasonable period of time that we're kind of working on this.
Do we have a Discord channel just to discuss about this topic? It will be more simple if we have specific channel for that. Or a group or something like that.
Did you say a Discord thread or
yeah, a thread or a channel, as you want, just like that, it will be more easy to follow.
Yeah, I've not created a thread yet, but the one that you and I, Karim, were using for a lot of the SnapSync work seemed to work pretty well, right? So maybe I'll create a thread specifically, and then that can keep everything in one place.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Seems like we have a way forward there too. Anything else?
Oh, I think Matthew Whitehead, you were asking about that ERC20 workloads for Caliper. So let me just paste that PR for you if you're still interested in that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nishal. Yeah, for others' awareness, I was doing some performance work a while back. Messian was super helpful in helping diagnose and tune Besu. And I've been focusing on using Caliper as a test tool, because it means you can point anyone at it as an open tool with kind of your configuration, and they can try and recreate the same performance. So we were using an ERC20 kind of configuration of Caliper to get some baseline numbers that everyone would kind of understand what an ERC20 transaction looks like.
Cool. Yeah.
Thanks, Nishal.
Thank you.
All right. Any other things before we close out? Okay. There's a decent amount of follow-ups. I'm gonna wait for the recording of this to come back out, and then I'll probably share some notes in that page and in Discord. So thank you everyone for joining us. It was pretty productive. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for facilitating, Matt.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, evenings, mornings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.